the question I have is the reaction of Fauci and Collins, and I definitely want to get into the infamous emails. When you guys released the Great Barrington Declaration, we now know that there was an orchestrated campaign to smear you guys. And it seems like, was it, were they covering something up, or were they just so conceited that they knew that they had the plan? But retell the story about what these very important guys said about you fringe epidemiologists.
Sure. So I gotta say, like I now have business card that says fringe epidemiologist on it. Let me tell the story. Actually,
you might as well own it.
So I'm kind of proud of the term now. When we wrote the Great Barrington Declaration, this is in October of 2020. 4 days after we wrote it, the head of the NIH, Francis Collins, National Institute of Health, Francis Collins, wrote an email to Tony Fauci, calling the three primary authors, me, Sunetra Gupta, and Martin Kulldorff. He called it the three of us fringe epidemiologists. I mean, it's well, whatever. I'll just leave that aside, right?
Stanford, Harvard, Oxford,
yes, right?
Fringe institutions. Sure.
Well, the thing is that's why he wrote that email, right? He wrote that, and then he called for a devastating published takedown of the premises of the Declaration. He wrote that email because the institutions from which we wrote, Stanford, Harvard, Oxford, threatened him and his lockdown strategy. Mm-hmm. It threatened his underling, Tony Fauci's strategy, right? It was when we wrote the Declaration, almost hundreds of thousands of regular people signed on to it. People sent in from around the world. They sent us translations of the document. It's a page document. You can go look it online, see if you find it controversial. They sent us translations into 30 different languages. Almost immediately, we got tens of thousands of scientists and epidemiologists signing on. What the Great Barrington Declaration did, the reason why it was important is not actually the ideas in it. The ideas in it are as old as the hills.
Yeah.
The reason it was important is because it told the world that there was not actually a scientific consensus in favor of lockdown and the lockdown strategy we adopted. And that's why Tony Fauci and Francis Collins acted the way they did. That was the threat. It undermined the illusion that there was a consensus around this lockdown, and they couldn't abide that. This goes back to your point about Hayek and decentral. I mean, I'm just like trying to imagine what Hayek would have made of the interchange between Rand Paul and Tony Fauci in the Senate, where very famously Tony Fauci's response to Rand Paul was like, if you're criticizing me, you're not simply criticizing a man, you are criticizing science itself,
right,
or something very close to that. I mean, in a sense, it's like this like, la science c'est moi, like the Louis XIV kind of moment for a science bureaucrat.
Right.
The arrogance is almost unbelievable. And the Great Barrington Declaration, what it did is it punctured that arrogance, because it said, look, there are a lot of prominent, well-known, completely reasonable, not actually fringe scientists who don't like the strategy you've adopted, who think that the strategy you've adopted was an enormous mistake. And that's why you saw this smearing campaign, and they're very effective at that. Like they have, I started getting calls from reporters asking me why I wanted to let the virus rip.
Yeah,
I never said those words. I never even thought those words. It's not in the Great Barrington Declaration. It's a piece of propaganda designed to destroy the credibility of anyone who says it. Because my primary goal is to save life, right? Protect vulnerable populations. The key tenet of the plan of the Great Barrington Declaration is focused protection of the old. How is that letting the virus rip? I mean, and then there's this sort of demonization of the idea of herd immunity, as if it's some sort of weird conspiracy theory or strategy, when in fact it's just a biological fact. Right. This pandemic ends when there's sufficient immunity in the population. It's not now. What we know is that kind of immunity doesn't protect you from getting the disease over again. What it does, it'll be more like the other coronaviruses, where you can get them over again, but you don't get severely ill. Right. So I think that idea that herd immunity is a strategy, they use that as a propaganda tool against, in favor of lockdown, as if somehow the end point of lockdown strategies isn't also herd immunity.